Hey everybody, welcome to DoWitt Garage. Today we're going to be installing a new radiator into my 2003 Infiniti G35 sedan. Let's get into it. Hey, I just wanted to post a little disclaimer to this video. I'm not a professional mechanic. I have a decent mechanical knowledge, but this is not a professional job by any means. I try to represent your average DIYer, the guy in his garage working with normal tools, just trying to save a bunch of money over going to the dealership to work on your own rides. So we're dealing with a cooling system today. They notoriously get hot, so be smart. Use jack stands. I'm going to use ramps in this video. And don't open the cap if your car is hot. Let it cool down. And just be safe, be smart, and just remember to do it. All right, so here is my G35. I was driving this thing last week, and I noticed a little bit of antifreeze leaking down on the floor when I went to get back in it. And then you look up here, we can see antifreeze all around through here. And it may be difficult to see, but there's some down here on the top of the radiator there. And if I grab where this is and I slowly bend it back and forth, you can see there's a crack directly below that's allowing the antifreeze down onto the fans, and then it drips out the bottom and it goes everywhere. So this car has 200,000 miles on it. It's the original radiator. I'd say it's done its job. We're going to put a new one in. Now this here is a TYC Amazon special 2455 model. It was about $100, and this is my daily driver. As I said, it's got 200,000 on it. I hated to spend a ton of money and get an upgraded all aluminum radiator, and it seemed like a lot of them had fitment issues. Everything I read on this, it should be a basic plug and play. We got a little bit of Asian model rated for Nissan, green antifreeze. And then this, because this is an automatic, it has a transmission cooler built into the bottom of the radiator. Therefore, when we take it off, we're going to leak a little bit of automatic transmission fluid. I got the Nissan. This is the Matic S. Again, off of Amazon. Comes 2-day prime shipping. Ready to go. Let's start taking this thing apart. So we're going to start with taking this air box off along with this shroud here in the front. It's going to eventually disconnect from back here. So to get us started, we're going to take out these two plastic clips here. You just pop up on the middle and the whole thing comes out nice and easy. Set these off to the side so we don't lose them. Then to get the air box off, we have a 10 millimeter over here on the side. Little 1/4-inch ratchet does the job no problem. And then we'll just loosen this. You could also use a Phillips screwdriver, but your 10 millimeter fits on here just as well. Loosen that up. That's just a hose clamp. And then we're going to unplug our airflow sensor here. Just press in on the tab, press it down, pulls right off. And we should be able to separate this. And you kind of wiggle this on out of here. Pop it up. And because we loosen this back here, also don't forget, we have a little wiring harness here. Just have to squeeze in on the bottom little tabs and it comes right out. Now you can really see just the extent to which the antifreeze was leaking out of this thing. You can see it looks like the Hulk had a great time in my car. We've got here on the front of the block, all over the case. I'll eventually end up taking all of this off to clean it, but for now, it's just going to be getting this fan shroud out as well as the radiator. Our next step will be removing our overflow tank here. This comes off very easy. Over here to the side of the cap, you can just squeeze this with your fingers, this little clip. We're going to pull our hose off. Slides off nice and simple. And then we have one 10 millimeter bolt right here. This hose, it just slips right into a little clip there, as well as here. and there's an alignment tab. When you pull this up, you just want to pull it straight up. And it's also a good idea. This should have fluid in it. Mine does not because it's been leaking out, but you should have a drain pan nearby for when you pop this off. In case any fluid comes out, you can just toss it in there. As you can see, this one, empty as could be. Here's a better look at the side of this tank. Right down here is what slides into the clip. You can see little fingers that stick out on this. So whenever you put it back in, you just want to make sure that the clip is up tight against the plastic and it slides into these little alignment slots. You're good to go. Your next stop is going to be underneath the car here. We need to take off this big plastic shield just like you would if you were changing the oil. On mine, this is a lot of 10 millimeters. I think these bolts have been swapped out, so there's a chance yours could be different. But there's about 6 to 10 of them. I don't remember the exact number, but just pop those out and the shield could come right off. Our next step here is going to be to drain the antifreeze. I thought for ease of camera angle, we'll just show you on the new radiator. So this is going to sit in the car like this. If you have an automatic, you have the little flanges at the bottom for your oil cooler. Those are facing towards the back. So this would be the driver's side of the radiator. And on the bottom, you will find this little threaded plug right here. You can stick your screwdriver up in there. You can see the white paint indicates that it was threaded in at the factory. But you need to make sure this is tight when you put the new radiator back on. But in order to get the other radiator out, we're going to want to drain it. So I'm going to take this off, send it into a drain pan over there. Here we are underneath the car. At this point, I would say it would be in your best interest to have some paper towels on hand, but you don't have to. It's okay. Live life on the edge. Take this little plug out and let her fly. If you go back up to the top, take the radiator cap off, you'll hear some air sucking through. You take that cap off, look how much faster it comes out of there. It is a closed system, so if you don't do that, it'll still drain. It'll just take quite a while. Just watch your splashes here. Now this car holds, from what I'm told, about 2.5 gallons of antifreeze. Now considering we're not emptying out the entire system, I only bought 2 gallons to refill it for this purpose with the new radiator, and that should be enough. But keep in mind, if you're doing a complete flush, you're going to want to buy about 3 gallons just to make sure you have a little extra. And this car, I'm told, can take either the green, or if you do a complete flush, you can put the newer blue antifreeze in there. But you want to do a complete flush. You don't want to mix those. So considering I'm not flushing the system, I'm taking green out, I'm putting green right back in. Our next step is going to be removing this fan shroud, which is attached to the radiator at the top only with 2 10mm bolts. At the bottom, it just has little pins that kind of slip into fittings on the side. Now, this shroud is really neat. If you look, my car has the single fan with a clutch. I know it's difficult to see, but it's just a single fan, clutch on the front. And the shroud on each side, I might just have to show you this when I get it out, has these little clips so you can actually pop them out and take the bottom part of the shroud off separately. And that allows you to disconnect. You won't have to take the fan off. You can disconnect the bottom from the shroud and pull the top part of the shroud out either with the radiator or separately. In this case, we're going to do it separately. I'll give you a better view of that once I get this out of here. When you look at these bolts, they almost look like wood bolts. They just screw into the plastic. See if you can focus. So just be careful when you're taking them out. Well, more so when you're putting them back in. You just don't want to strip these. So at this point, we're ready. Our shroud is loose, and we are ready to take our upper radiator hose off. You can use any pliers. I choose channel locks because of who I am as a person, but they'll all work. Just grip these, kind of wiggle this off of here. And walk it back. Now, a little tip, if you get in here and your radiator hose is stuck, it will not pull off. You can grab it with a bigger pair of pliers or just your hands and see if you can just wrench it to the side. A lot of times it'll break that hermetic seal loose and you'll be able to pop it off of there. In this case, I don't think we need to take this back clip off. We should be able to get the front one clear with just having that one off. There we go. Here's a little better view of the fan shroud. You may have seen I had some trouble getting it out. I didn't pull one of these clips out. I found that out halfway through. So this is actually the top of it here. Here's the bottom. And what I was talking about with the bottom coming off of here, it's right here. You can see these little clips. They push in. So there's 4 of those, 2 on each side. And whenever you're trying to pull these out of the car, all it does is snap in place like so. Whenever you're trying to get this out of the car, if you just reach down and you push in, you pop it up, and it does that on each side. On this side, push in, pop it out, and this bottom part will separate. You can pull it out the bottom or just leave it there. And this top part will come out independent from the radiator and be out of your way. All right, we're back underneath the car here. Our next step is to take off our lower radiator hose right here. Clips are the same as the top. Got my vice grips. And as you can see, this thing is still draining antifreeze. It's very slow at this point, but it's still a steady stream. So we're going to pop this lower hose off, and then at that point, we'll move on to the transmission coolers. We'll disconnect the radiator from the top and be ready to pull this thing on out of here. Same thing as before. Sometimes this gets stuck, especially on this bottom one, and it may be, you might have to grab it with some pliers and just loosen it, just twist it back and forth. If you need a little bit of extra grip, you don't want to put pliers on it, just try grabbing it with a paper towel. That can provide a little bit of extra traction and see if you can pop her loose. And you definitely want to have a drain pan when you do this because there's a good chance that a decent amount of fluid might come out of here. There we go. Here, now that the antifreeze is almost all drained out, we're going to work on our transmission cooler lines. There are 2 of these coming in on an automatic transmission. They're basically the same as the antifreeze coolant lines. You just want to take your vice grips, walk back these clips, and they are just a slip fit connection, so you should just pull them straight off. Now you are going to lose some transmission fluid when you do this, so be sure to have an empty jug handy. In this case, this one's fully empty, so that way I'll be able to gauge how much drains out, so I know how much to put back in. Of course, we'll check that in different ways as well. Have paper towels on hand. Yeah, nice little stream of fluid coming out here. Get as much of that as possible. Pretty clean job overall. Once this one's done draining, we'll move on to the second one. All right, the first one's done draining. Hardly any came out of there. Maybe I don't even know if a quarter of a quart, just a very little amount. Just wrapped it up with a paper towel to catch any excess that might drip on out. Go ahead and pop the other one off here. Hopefully it comes off as easy as the first one did. And it is. It helps if you twist it as you're going. All right. Be sure and clean up any residual oil, keeps it off your floor. We'll just leave that right there to go ahead and drain the rest of the way. Okay, we are almost there. Now you'll notice on the top of the radiator we have these keepers. There's one on this side, one over here. These are very simple to undo. You just need to twist them counterclockwise and they come right out. You're going to want to use a pair of pliers. I see people use needle nose and they'll work, but you don't want to break them. So if you just go real easy until it aligns with the tabs, you should be able to just pull these straight up. So you can see it's got these flanges on the side, and here we got these two flanges on the sides. Just stick it in there, and we'll twist it clockwise when it's time to put it back in. We'll do this on the other side and be ready to go. We are almost there. The radiator is almost attached, but it is still attached to a condenser and fan setup. You may have noticed we have a hole here, and then on the other side, by where we took out this keeper, there's a hole here. There's a 10mm bolt. Are you seeing a trend here? We have to take those out on each side, and then the radiator should be unbolted. The only thing holding it in at the bottom is two little slip couplings. Now these bolts are a little long-winded, so just when you think you've got it out, you don't. So keep going. And if you think you can grip your extension with your greasy antifreeze hands, you can't. So just keep using your ratchet. Ask me how I know. There we go. Easy peasy. Okay, the radiator's ready to be pulled out. Basically, it's just held in by the grommets on the bottom. We're going to pop it up. We're going to shift it back towards the motor. And just be aware, there is a condenser on the front of it that will come out with it. It's just held in with two little slip clips. I'll show you here in a second. But we have to undo the whole thing, push it back, and we can leave that in place and take just the radiator out. So I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to push it back. There we go. And then we're just going to lift it right out of there. Okay, we are free. Radiator should just come right out the top. Should just come right out the top. You should just, I think it's just gonna So it's just going to come right out the bottom is what's going to happen. It's going to come out the bottom. And as you can see, 200,000 miles, she's got some stuff on her. I can only imagine that a new radiator is going to make this thing cool that much better. So let's keep at it. Now the old radiator is out, time to put the new one in. The process is just going to be the exact opposite. First thing we're going to want to do is transfer our grommets over to the new one. You have two small, two larges. The small ones go on these little posts on the top, and your large ones are going to go on the posts on the bottom. Who'd have thought? Or they're... We're going to put those in as we put the radiator in. That's what we're going to do. So, put these in when that one's tight. So, we're going to put the radiator in from the bottom, like a professional, if you couldn't tell from the way it came out. And I'd get you down in here, but the camera view is not that great, but a bunch of crud fell out when that happened. Guys, if you're in here, clean it out as best as you can. I just ran around with kind of a dry rag and knocked a lot of this loose. I'm sure when I start the car up, the fan will go and blow a lot of the excess out. But, I mean, we took out probably 2 big handfuls of just leaves and debris and other things that it's picked up throughout the 20 years this car has been on the road. So some of that's to be expected. So we're going to take the radiator, slip it in, and reconnect it to this condenser here. What I was having trouble with getting it out was that condenser slides right into these two, and it slides down into these 2 notches. And one of them was just seized tight, and it took me quite a while to get it undone. But once that was done, we were able to separate the radiator, and we could get it out of there no problem. So here we go. We can go ahead and slip our grommets on, and it's going to fit into the 2 holes on the bottom, just like the way we took it off. All right, this is what I'm talking about underneath the car. We have this little stem coming off of the radiator. This is where the big grommets are going to go. I'll slip it on up there. We got one on the other side as well. And then we're just going to push it up and into place. See, it fell down right into this little slot. It did on the other side as well. And congratulations, the radiator is on the way to being installed. Next up is going to be putting our 2 10mm back into here. You might have to do a little bit of alignment. It should be close, but on this one, the holes are not exactly lined up. So just need to reach in there and try to get your bolt started while holding both the condenser and the new radiator. Some of you guys probably use power tools, but I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like the old way. And we just take these, the reverse, put it around here, and just might want to, it helps to kind of pull back on this. Just put it in there and twist her home. Just 90 degrees, locks it in. Okay, next up is going to be our radiator shroud. As I discussed earlier, you got both pieces. Again, this just slips in the 4 clips. So we're actually going to put this in from the bottom afterwards. I'm going to slide this in around the fan on the top, but first I'm going to just clean it up a bit. All right, we got the shroud about to go in. All we need to do is make sure that we clear the fan and that we get it into those 2 little notches on the bottom of the radiator. It helps to pull your upper hose back. Once you have it to about this point, you should be able to line it up pretty well on the bolts, and then we'll go beneath, slip it into those little plastic slots. There's one. Come on now. And there's two. Now that those are in, we can go ahead and take our two 10mm bolts. These are the ones that screw. They look like wood screws. They're just screwing into plastic. So when you put them in there, be sure not to over tighten them. Damage your fancy new $100 radiator. Don't want to do that. And even if they start a little crooked, just because they're wood bolts, wood-looking bolts, as you get them going, they will screw in and straighten themselves. Perfect. So that's all good. We're going to go into the bottom. We'll slide this up. All right, we're here under the car. We're just going to slide this. It looks like an L, and the bottom is going towards the front of the car. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. Okay, while we're here under the car, we can go ahead and button up our underside here. You'll notice the transmission cooler lines have these little black plastic caps. Just pop those off real quick. And these are very simple. Just slide right back on where you brought them from. Hit. There we go. Don't forget your clamps. There we go. And you can give them just a slight tug. Make sure they're on there okay. You definitely don't want them coming off. I like to twist them just a little bit. You're good to go. Now is also a perfect time. I already did this. Make sure that your drain plug on the radiator is good and tight. It has a rubber gasket in there. You don't need to over tighten it. It's plastic into plastic, but just make sure that gasket is nice and compressed and you won't have any leaks to deal with down the road. Okay, that one's on there as well. This all goes very fast once the radiator's in. Put our lower hose on. It's got a little stopper there that won't let it go any further. We just walk our clamp right back to its spot. Up here on top, it's real simple. We already got the fan shroud fully in place. All we need to do is put our upper radiator hose back on. Do not forget your clamps. You will have a bad day. All right. So now the radiator itself is fully back in. All we need to do now is finish up with our ancillary things, such as the air box and our overflow here. So let's get to it. Good and tight, ready to go. Over here on the driver's side, we have our air box. You'll notice on the bottom here, we have two alignment pins as well as this here. If you look down in there, you'll see a little plastic tube that slides up into here and a place where each of these goes into. Pretty self-explanatory. Bit of a challenge, but no big deal. We have 110 millimeter, goes over here. And then we had to tighten up our clamp up here. That doesn't need to be extraordinarily tight, just enough to hold it on there. We have a little plastic clip, slides right here in the back. This swings around, drops right into our sensor. You hear a good click, and you're ready to go. Okay. And over here, we just have this one little plastic one. It just slips in, and we have two little plastic clips. Slip right in. There you go. Everything is right back installed exactly how it should be. Now, we just need to fill it with antifreeze, purge the system, and we're ready to go. Obviously, you're going to add antifreeze here, but you think, what happens to all the air in the system? Well, back here, it's a little hidden. You have your back corner here of your engine cover, and there's a set of some wire loom right here. Underneath there is a plug, and it has the same fitting on it that was on the bottom of the radiator on the drain plug. So if you take your Phillips screwdriver, screw that out, that will allow air to exit the system as you're filling it up here. We're going to go do that. We'll start filling her up with antifreeze. Now, of course, at this point, you're going to want to make sure that you have all your fittings tight, all your hoses are on, your drain plug is tight, or you will simply be dumping antifreeze out the bottom of your radiator, and that's not what we want. That's 1 gallon in. So I put 1 gallon in there, and actually it's full to the top of the radiator, but that is deceptive. What we're going to do is we're going to start squeezing our upper radiator hose, and every time I do that, the level is going to drop just a little bit because we're going to get some air out of here. And I can also hear it back, that screw, the air bleeder screw. I can hear it bubble in there as well. Every time I squeeze it, just a little bit more goes down. It's worth noting that you're going to go through this. You'll get as much air out as you can. You'll start the car. You'll let it run for a while. I prefer to run it without the cap for just a little while, just to let it get that air out. But also, you're going to want to check this level for the first 3 to 5 days. I mean, the last thing you want to do is to overheat right after a new radiator install. So squeeze the tubes the best you can. You can squeeze the lower one as well. It's just going to work that air through the system. Do the best you can. Don't put too much pressure on it, on yourself, I should say. And then just keep checking it for the first week or so, and you'll be just fine. Anybody can do this, and I'll tell you, it saves you a lot of money versus trying to do this at the dealership. Online, I was seeing people post quotes of $500 and $600. Well, I mean, come on, guys. This has been about a 2-hour job with filming it, so it's just not too labor intensive. The most challenging part was getting the radiator out. and the radiator was $100, and then each gallon of antifreeze was about $23. I bought some. It's decent brand. It wasn't the cheapest stuff there. I wanted to get the Asian specific, meant for Nissan. I don't know what that means. I figured might as well be safe. But anybody can do this, and I really hope that even though I'm not necessarily a professional, hopefully this video has answered some questions for anyone trying to do this on their own. We'll keep squeezing this, getting the air out. I'll go squeeze the lower tube as well. We'll keep doing this until I cannot get any more, and then we'll start the car up and see how she does. Just a reminder, when you're working with antifreeze, the stuff tastes really sweet to animals. So once you get it drained, you're going to want to make sure you store it safely somewhere that nothing can get into it. I've got a couple of empty containers here. I'm just going to pour it right into here as soon as you're done. Don't waste it around on this or somebody could get hurt. Okay, as you can see now with it running, we are burping some air out here of our cap. We're just going to leave that be. Now it's also worth noting that we did lose a little bit of transmission fluid on this. Now still, it's very little. I mean, maybe a half a quart total, if that. It was very, very, very little. So I'm going to check that here soon, but it's not worth worrying about quite yet. So we still have plenty of transmission fluid in there. It's not going to burn up the pump. It's not going to do anything bad. So we're just going to let this run for a little bit. We're going to let it cycle through. Make sure to turn your heat on full blast, and that'll get it cycled through the heat exchanger. All right, it's worth noting, when I shut the car off, we went ahead and we got some antifreeze or some air out of the system, and it sucked it back down. So we definitely have some room to add some now. I know it's a little messy, but the car maintained temp. I think we're in good hands. And we don't want to forget, you need to fill up your overflow tank. Maybe I should have done that first, but it's okay. Just make sure you do it. We have it's building up a little bit of pressure, just a little hot, I should say. I'll put the cap on here. I'm going to top it off. I'm going to put the cap on. I'm going to take it for a little spin, just around the block, just a couple minutes. You want to keep a close eye on that temp gauge. You're going to come back. You're going to let it cool. You're going to try it again, check it, and you're going to want to do that off and on for the first few days. But we already put in just about as much antifreeze as what came out. So we have a little fine-tuning to do as far as the level, but we're going to be pretty close. So anyway, guys, I hope that helped you a little bit. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure you don't overheat your car. But I know this wasn't the cleanest job in the world, but I hope at least if you're tackling this, it helped to answer some of the questions you might have going into it. It's an easy DIY job. You can do it in your garage in a few hours. You save a lot of money versus taking this thing to the dealer and having them do it. So anyway, thank you for tuning in to Do It Garage. See you next time.